What's good, friends list, episode 95 of the Gamecast coming at you. The battle between Microsoft and Apple over Xbox's cloud gaming service has been raging on for quite some time now, with the latter's guidelines forcing the former to find a new way to offer its service to its users on iOS devices. But since learning that Microsoft plans to launch the service via Apple's web browser, fans have been waiting to get their chance to test it out, and it looks like that time just may be right now. So, this week, we get you caught up on the latest news of Microsoft bringing cloud gaming to iOS devices and PCs in a new limited beta. Are you expecting a smooth service out of the gate? How will the browser integration work? We set the stage for you so you're ready to give it a go. Plus, we've got a ton of new info on Resident Evil Village. Jeff Kaplan departs Blizzard, nukes are finally going off in Warzone, and much, much more coming up on the newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travless, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And what have you been playing? Because I feel like I'm going to get a nice, healthy dose of Hunt in your conversation today.
Yeah, I've been playing a ton of Hunt Showdown and genuinely enjoying the crap out of it. But also, me and Marshy started to play Halo 1. So we started replaying through the campaign on Halo 1 and just genuinely just having fun and enjoying it because, all things considered, we have been, we've been playing through that game for years and years at a time. Mm-hmm. And it's just been a lot of fun. And also with the new par times and everything, we've just been, kind of not necessarily rushing per se, but we have been kind of, trying to beat all those par times and everything because it just adds another layer of gameplay that, is super enjoyable when it comes to Halo. It's something that may or may not, people may or may not be used to, competing as far as time trials and that nature. So it's just been very enjoyable in that sense.
No, for sure. I mean, that's another game that's, that series in general, obviously for you, me, so many people I'm sure who listen to this podcast, so integral to their gaming history and whatnot like that. But Halo CE especially is one of those games that I could easily go back to and play. I think it's one of the best campaign shooters that holds up long term. I mean, there's some, I feel like most campaign shooters usually do, but more so that age well, that you look at, some of the Call of Duty, that era of Xbox, whether it's late original to, 360 era of first-person shooter campaigns, especially since kind of Live was in its infancy at that point. You're seeing a lot more emphasis on campaigns, but you look at something like CE compared to, a Call of Duty, World at War, or something like that, even then at that almost 10-year gap, to me, CE just holds its own for so long, and the story holds up for so long, in my opinion, at least. But
yeah, and just genuinely the Xbox, the new iteration of it, I guess you could say, I would use new kind of loose, but it is interesting to play, solely for the fact that you have a game that you can hit the back button and get the classic graphics or the updated graphics at any point in time, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also super cool that you can kind of switch back and forth. So been enjoying some of that. But outside of that, I haven't been playing a whole heck of a lot of new stuff. Just genuinely playing a lot of Hunt. And I wouldn't say I'm hunted out at this point in time. I still do like the game. It's still very enjoyable. But I would say that, like, after unlocking the Plague Doctor, which is like something that wasn't necessarily all that realistic for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that I kind of decided, hey, like, I'm very close to unlocking that. I'm just gonna do it and finish it, and I ended up doing just that. So
nice.
All in all, been super enjoyable, and have enjoyed that game, a lot. I know I can understand how it's not everyone's cup of tea, if you will. I can totally get that. And all in all, after playing through it for a while, I genuinely enjoy it, and I know you and Adam do also. But I can also see the whole, like, maybe not being all that. I could see why people might not be that into it. You know what I mean?
No, definitely, and I completely understand what you're saying. Where it's like, it for me, it's my cup of tea. I like playing. I like having that. It's such a mesh of PvP, PvE, and almost to a degree of it's in a sense, almost at times, a quest-based, like, BR, in a sense.
Yeah.
Or BR light, I should say. It's not as, over the top with the amount of teams that are going in compared to, like, an Apex Legends or something like that, where you're having 100 people jump in or something like that. But, it's still at that point where it has that element of you have to be on your toes at all times, but you're also worried about completing objectives throughout the session that you're in, whether it be to get, all of the, whether it be to go through and get, if there's multiple bosses on the map, go and get, all the objectives with them, kill the boss, get the bounties, everything like that, return to them. Or you could just specifically play it in, hey, I'm going to focus on taking out the other teams first and let them kind of do my legwork, and I'll take them out at the end and just swoop in and take everything. So there's a lot of different ways you could play the game, and to me, I really enjoy that and really think there's a lot of depth to it. And that's not the bag on BRs in general, because I think there is some depth to BRs, but I want to, to me, there's a shelf life with BRs in terms of my time that I'm playing. So it's a little different where it's like, I can do without, hot dropping 650 times in one night, where I like something like this where it's a little more, kind of focused in and, not necessarily, I don't want to say wasting my time, but, it's focused and it's objective based, and I feel like I'm accomplishing something every time I play it. A little more than other BRs, but on my end, though, it's kind of been a little bit of that. Been playing some Hunt with you guys. Been doing some stuff on my on the PlayStation side with my fiance, so that's been good. A whole bunch of other stuff too in general, just and playing Overwatch obviously when I have the time. And I did start to, haven't gotten too far, but my what do I want to call it? My objective for this year, one of them was to go through and start playing more of the Metal Gear Solid series, which I love the series. It feels like I've played so many of the games but never beat them. But I love the character of Solid Snake and, Big Boss and everything like that. So I've been going back through and I want to go back through and try to play all those games. But I'll be quite honest, Metal Gear Solid 1, it has not aged well in terms of its presentation, in terms of the original release, the PS1. It is pretty rough. So, I've been playing the Twin Snakes remake of it that came out on GameCube originally. I know this is obviously an Xbox show, but that's the only platform it was released on. I would love to see that game kind of ported elsewhere. And to be honest, if there's been a lot of rumors around, hey, are we going to eventually see a Metal Gear Solid remake or something like that? Kojima being involved or whatever, and all of this stuff. But or even with Blue Point on the Sony side, but I would love to see them just take that game in terms of Twin Snakes and bring that forward. Obviously add to it a little bit, freshen it up, maybe add a little, update the textures a little bit and the lighting and stuff like that. But it plays at 60 frames per second on GameCube originally. So, the game plays well, and the presentation is pretty damn good. But it still has some of its quality of life tweaks that, that kind of bogs down the story and pacing at times with Metal Gear Solid 1. So, but I'm having a great time with it. I just started. I'm only a couple hours in, but it's one of those games that I'm like, I just want to play. I want to play it and get done with it, but more so like I'm ready to start the experience, and like I know it's only going to keep climbing higher and higher from here. That it's like I want to get this first one out of the way. That's realistically the first Metal Gear Solid game is the hardest to play in terms of being able to just freaking play it, because you have to have it's only available on a handful of devices in terms of like modern gaming. Like it's not on PS4, PS5, Xbox, or Xbox One, Series X, whatever. PC, there's one PC port on GOG, which I don't really use GOG that much. And I've heard the PC port is really bad, so I've stayed away from that. Really, the only place to play it is PS3 or Vita, if you want to play, or PSP. But then again, we're getting way out there. That it's like, for a game this monumental and important to the history of gaming, it's like you would feel like that would be a little more, taken care of and like preserved on modern systems and whatnot. So, but I digress. I'm having a good time with that. And I was playing a few other things, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later in the show because it kind of comes into the topics that we're talking about. So without further ado, Mike, let's head into Butt Mash because we got a lot to talk about this week. So if you're new to the show, Butt Mash is where we run through our quick hit news stories for the week before we head into our big topics and whatnot, just to get you caught up in the world of video games, specifically Xbox and PC. So, Mike, let's kick it off with Pour One Out. And this one hits hard to home. It hits hard, man. Jeff Kaplan, the director of Overwatch, has announced he is leaving Blizzard Entertainment after nearly 20 years with the company. In a personal message, Kaplan announced his departure from Blizzard Entertainment after 19 years. Greetings, Overwatch community. I'm leaving Blizzard Entertainment after 19 amazing years. It was truly the honor of a lifetime to have the opportunity to create worlds and heroes for such a passionate audience. I want to express my deep appreciation to everyone at Blizzard who support the game, our game teams, and our players. But I want to say a specific thanks to the wonderful game developers that shared in the journey of creation with me. Never accept the world as it appears to be. Always dare to see it for what it could be. I hope you do the same. GG, Jeff Kaplan. And then an update on that too. Development on Overwatch 2 will continue with Assistant Director Aaron Keller taking over as the new director on the sequel. Keller previously worked with Kaplan on World of Warcraft, so he's a veteran of the series as well and was one of the founding members of the Overwatch team. So a lot of people, obviously a little shaky because Jeff was one of the bigger bright sides to the Overwatch community. Somebody who was really passionate about that and fought for that game. And especially, too, when you think about Overwatch moving forward into Overwatch 2. And, I'll kind of save some of this for after, but was really, a driving force to get Overwatch 2 players to be able to migrate, and play with Overwatch 1 players to play with Overwatch 2 players when that does come out, was a driving force for that. So I'll kind of touch on that after, but yeah, tough times with Overwatch, but future still looks bright, and I'm still positive that Aaron will do a good job. But Verdansk, moving on here, Verdansk has been nuked, blown to pieces.
Finally, we've been talking about this for how long?
I know. Finally, we got the update in Call of Duty Warzone. Although we won't know what the aftermath looks like for a while. The destruction of Verdansk Part 1 event in Call of Duty Warzone set the stage for Warzone Season 3 in a apparently zombified fashion. At noon Pacific time on Wednesday, players were able to join in on a new limited time free mode that built up the past week or so of Warzone's in-game narrative. Folks suited up like a normal game of Warzone, but eerily quiet orchestral tracks and a map positively swarming with radiation zones that move quickly told us that this would be a different kind of match, leading to the eventual detonation of the nuclear warheads on the map. Tales of Arise will now be released on September 10th for Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS5, PS4, and PC. After being delayed indefinitely last year, the new release date has allowed the development team to fix quality concerns, improve accessibility, and even add next-gen console versions. The team wouldn't be drawn on whether there would be a Nintendo Switch version of the game or not. People Can Fly has announced that players who lost their items due to Outriders' now patched inventory wipe glitch will get a pretty nice reward to make up for the inconvenience. On Reddit, a spokesperson explained that the items previously wiped will be returned with, quote, the same attribute combinations but with gold roll values. This means that those items will be at least the same, if not better quality than the original lost items. On top of that, those items will be returned at your character's highest possible equipped level, and takes your world tier and challenge tier into consideration, meaning you won't be given back a weapon that's immediately out of date for your progress. That was a lot of, and I remember that was always a big issue with people who played like Destiny and Division and stuff like that, that loot would just kind of like, it wouldn't be scalable and things like that, anytime they would get a new loot drop or something or find a new weapon, not being able to upgrade it and whatnot. But obviously moving into Destiny 2, that changed a lot, but I digress. Cyberpunk 2077's canceled wall running feature has been brought back into the game thanks to a modder named Saturn. As reported by PC Games N, Saturn's wall run mod is still a work in progress. However, it is available on Nexus mods for players to try out right now. Once installed, double jumping near a wall will cause your V to run along said wall. There are a few caveats, however, as not looking forward when wall running can cause players to go through the wall. Furthermore, not all walls are suited for wall running, so you have to kind of be careful when doing that. Not only has Rockstar updated both Max Payne 3 and LA Noire on PC, it has also made all DLC for each game free for anyone who owns them. As reported by Eurogamer, these updates were pushed quietly on April 19th, the same day Rockstar accidentally delisted its games on Steam for a short time. As part of this, Rockstar's 2003 racing game Midnight Club 2 was made available for purchase again for a short time before it was delisted once more, on top of all the DLC being added to Max Payne 3 and LA Noire. New Quick Resume features are coming to Xbox Series X and S. New updates include the ability to see and delete Quick Resume save states to create space for other games are rolling out to Xbox insiders at the moment. If you're unfamiliar, Quick Resume is an Xbox exclusive feature that allows users to suspend multiple games and swap between them at their leisure. Amazon has canceled its Lord of the Rings MMORPG that was first announced in 2019. As reported by Bloomberg, the game was in development at Amazon Game Studios alongside China-based Lutao Technologies Holdings, which was purchased by Tencent Holdings in December 2020. The contract negotiations between Amazon and Tencent were said to have caused a dispute that eventually led to the game's cancellation. An Amazon spokesperson confirmed that following Tencent's acquisition of Leo, it had been, quote, unable to secure terms to proceed with at this time. The team will be shifted to other projects, and Amazon shared its disappointment in not being able to bring this project to the world. And finally, Hitman series developer IO Interactive has opened up a new Barcelona studio, which will work on Hitman, Project 007, their James Bond project they're working on, and a, quote, unannounced new IP. Revealed in a blog post on the IO website, IO Barcelona will be the company's third studio after IO Copenhagen in Denmark and IO Malmo in Sweden. IO Barcelona will work on all of IO's ongoing projects. Quote, all three of IO Interactive studios are treated as elite studios and will make significant impact to ongoing development and publishing efforts across all projects, reads a press release. So, Mike, before we head into our big topics, anything in Button Mash you want to run back real quick?
I would like to talk about, basically the Hitman series developer opening a new Barcelona studio, which is going to work on Hitman, the Project 007, and an unannounced new IP. Whether you like the games or not, it's getting to the point where it's almost undebatable that the Hitman series as a whole, especially recently, is like pretty stellar, actually. Like, whether you like the games or not, they're quality games. They're made well. They have a lot, like, they're not a game that you constantly see on YouTube or Twitch, like, as being buggy. So hats off to them. They've done a lot of work, and congratulations to open their new studio because, with COVID, I think a lot of these game devs are going to be going the other way, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of a big deal, in my opinion. Also, Amazon canceling the Lord of the Rings MMORPG. That's really, it's a bummer.
Mhm.
Of course, not 100% sure what to expect from an Amazon game studio.
Mhm.
It kind of sounds like a trap. And it's only because it's Amazon.
Yeah.
I would think how can I make money off of this is the first thing that comes to mind with Amazon.
Yeah,
But
that's
I think
kind of it's interesting too that you bring that up because Amazon now, correct me if I'm, well, me correcting myself, I guess it would be, but I believe that's Amazon who's making New World. Yeah, I was gonna say, though it wasn't Google. I was thinking, I keep getting confused between both Amazon and Google wanting to get in and create games right now. But I know Google had shut down its first party game content and development studios, but I don't know why I was thinking it might have been Google. But Amazon, yes, they're the ones who are working on New World, which is an MMORPG that's coming out that a lot of people were surprisingly positive on. It's supposedly releasing this year on August 31st. We'll see about that. But when they play tested it with a bunch of streamers and a bunch of streamers, tested out or streamed the beta and stuff like that, or maybe it was a closed alpha or something, but a early build of the game and them streaming it to get some of that, testing done on it. A lot of streamers are really, really positive on, people who play a lot of WoW, people who play a lot of Final Fantasy 14, so people like Tim the Tatman, who is a very, very vocal, staple in the WoW community at times, was very positive about it. Who else was Bruce Green was another one who was playing it, who was very positive on it. So it's interesting you say that because I'm curious if to, especially with that project being canceled, them looking at it as maybe not a blessing in disguise, because somebody like me who I love the Lord of the Rings, Adam loves the Lord of the Rings. I grew up on Tolkien love and narrative of that. I love the universe that he built, and it sucks to see that go. But at the same time, I always get Lord of the Rings Online vibes every time I read about that Lord of the Rings MMO. So for me, possibly, I would, if I'm Amazon, I may see that somewhat in a blessing as a blessing in disguise, because that could help, funnel people onto this project that, like you're saying, sometimes when I hear Amazon, I think of money, 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 money,
Yeah.
money. And I agree. And I 100% agree. But if I take the money out of this and I'm looking from, okay, if they have the right people, which I don't know, they have the right people who are in charge of the executive level overseeing the gaming branch of Amazon, hopefully they're cognitive enough to say, okay, that sucks that we're losing that. But obviously, it doesn't sound like there's any layoffs coming out of that, at least none that I read within there. Correct me if I'm wrong, obviously. If that does, that's fucking horrible. But, it didn't seem like there were any layoffs involved with it, that it seems like they'll be brought in to work on other projects within Amazon. So if that's the case, maybe them saying, okay, we found, we saw the struggles that Google had, where Google released a fucking game and instantly shut it off. We're just delisted it. They released it and 2 days later in a similar genre, in an MMO-esque, free-to-play space, I guess, in their opinion. But saying, okay, we have something that I think people are going to like. We've gotten positive feedback on. Let's add to that instead of maybe spreading the net. Let's our first game that we bring out that's a heavy hitter, like a triple A, quad A even level game, we got to make sure we hit it out of the park. And that might be the first step with that. I didn't mean to go on that long tangent, but it was just interesting you brought up that it may be a blessing in disguise for not necessarily a money reason, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something, I just think that a Lord of the Rings MMORPG is something that people have been, I don't know that they've necessarily been pining for, but it's something that WoW has done such a terrific job at the MMORPG level that a game or a universe, rather, like Lord of the Rings or even Harry Potter, both sound like such great ideas. But again, it comes down to execution. It's something that I say a lot on this show. pretty much every episode. I talk about games and that if you're not going to execute it properly, I'd rather you not even make it. And that's still true. I mean, look at what Halo's been going through. Look at Gears of War. Look at some of these other games that were such great games. And it feels like for some reason or another, and I mean, I'm happy to be getting another Halo. I think Infinite's going to be a reasonable experience. I would feel safe betting on that. At least reasonable. I'm saying it should be better, but you know, a lot of these games, you know, like Mass Effect with Andromeda, they're just kind of like limping along, and they're just purely used as like money grubs, and that's just that's in today's day and age, people are starting to kind of see through the BS, and they're starting to catch things like that. So I also want to give a kudos to Rockstar, because surprisingly updating Max Payne 3 and LA Noire, it's like there's absolutely no reason for them to do this. But again, it's something that game studios will do out of the blue. And it's almost like a working in good faith type of situation. Like showing people that like, hey, yeah, we're still, you know, making hand over fist over GTA 5 because people have modded it and done RPG and now everyone wants to play it. And lol, look at you guys buying an 8-year-old game and we just keep printing money from it. But at the same time, when they're putting money into other experiences like this, it's super cool. So good for them. But outside of that, I think and real quick, I know you've been like super deep into Overwatch. You've always been someone who's been into Overwatch. I was into Overwatch for a little bit, but I mean, I strictly can only play DPS. Right. And it's like, it's for a couple of reasons. One, I can shoot my gun and I hate being a tank and having more damage than my DPS.
Yeah. That is frustrating at times.
I am completely terrible at especially at tank. And even healing a little bit, because my positioning's kind of whack because I'm used to just wanting to kill their DPS. Yeah. So
you know, we're just a different breed. How can I say? Support mains.
You gotta. I mean, you guys are the real MVP because you guys are the people that everyone blames whenever you lose.
Don't tell Team Voice Chat that. God forbid, don't tell them that.
Everyone just blames tanks, and it's like it's really not their fault.
Everyone blames DPS. It always will come down to everyone blames tanks and healing. That's it. I could have 15k healing in a round, and they're like. Would have been better if our fucking healer did something. Like, yeah, it's what?
As a DPS main, especially I would play the hit scan. I played Ashe a lot because I like the mobility of Ashe and I like the 2 headshot kills on DPS and healers. Because my main goal when I played, and I was only plat, but when I was Ashe, the only thing I really tried to do was 2 headshot. I would use my dynamite on their tank. So if like Reinhardt was being annoying with a shield, I would throw my dynamite just over it and blow it up and catch him on fire. So he's weakened. And then the other thing I would do is even whenever Mercy was jumping and flying around like a clown, I would just try to 2 headshot them, because the minute that you kill their Mercy, it's like GG. Like you're going to stop the push because there's nothing going to keep them alive. But anyway, instead of talking about personal anecdotes on how I played Ashe, Jeff Kaplan leaving after 20 years with the company is somewhat of a pretty big deal. I'm not saying that it's going to do anything negatively to Overwatch or anything of that nature. I'm just saying that, you know, for someone who's been there for 21 years, you're talking since 2001, you're talking since like Diablo 2 was released. Yeah. You're talking about a long tenured employee, you know, stepping away. And I'm not sure where this leaves Overwatch. And quite frankly, maybe to the chagrin of some of our listeners and even you, Travis, like Overwatch is in it's starting to kind of fall. It already had started to fall off, but it feels like it's falling uncontrollably at this point. So what this will do for it, I'm not sure, but I am interested to see where they go next, because it seems like 8 years ago they announced the release of Overwatch 2 and we haven't seen anything of it. So it's like, are you really coming out with Overwatch 2, or did you just say that to get people to hang on?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens going forward, but that's the button mash stories that I wanted to talk about, which is basically like some I'm just like, meh. I mean, you covered it, but this one, there's a lot going on there. So
yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things that it like I was saying, Jeff did a lot for the community in terms of like he was always a focal point of bringing positivity into it. He was always very transparent. He was always very community focused in terms of, hey, what do you guys want? What do you guys need us to do on our end? And like I was kind of bringing up before, but like, you know, the one thing that does make me a little uneasy about him leaving is that he was always such a vocal, person of, hey, I want to make sure that we, in terms of like, with Overwatch, he wanted it. His vision seemed more to be of Overwatch being a platform, and that's what we've seen with Activision, with Destiny in the past, really stray against that, and that pushed Bungie away. And granted, Bungie wasn't owned by Activision, but when you look at it from a broader perspective, it's like Destiny. Bungie always wanted Destiny to be this platform of, hey, we got. We have Destiny 1, we have a 10-year plan for that. And then Activision, 3 years later, hey, saying, hey, no, we got to do Destiny 2 because we got to turn around and sell more copies, So it's something like that, and that pushed Bungie away because they wanted to just keep Destiny a platform. And now you see Destiny in this weird, naming position, still going by Destiny 2, but really Destiny 2 is now the Destiny proper, like in a weird way. And kind of bringing that back to Blizzard, Jeff really pushed to make sure that, hey, we're not annexing our community, because there are going to be people who play almost to the degree of like when you saw, and I know it's not complete one-to-one, but traditionally when you previously saw shooters like Halo that had numbered entries, there would be people who would play, hey, we're going to stick to playing Halo 2 and not play Halo 3, or Halo 3 and not play Reach. And you had those numbered entries almost like in a CS, going from 1.6 to Source to then Go. Like, there's people who strayed and didn't want to, go outside of that zone because of, hey, this is what we want out of the game, or yada, yada. Jeff pushed to make sure, hey, no, we want everybody to be able to play together if they want. So if you own Overwatch 1, you could play with people who play Overwatch 2, or vice versa. Now, granted, I'm sure that would have included, hey, you're not going to get the maps of Overwatch 2 or whatnot, but it was more, Overwatch 2 became more of, in my eyes, more of like an expansion, where we're seeing, an update to the graphical, prowess of it, I'm sure, and, new lighting and things like that, but we're also seeing, added, more so content that is, hey, if you want more content, it's there for you. But the core Overwatch experience, we don't want to annex anybody from taking that. And that's why I always, like, even looking at it since they've announced Overwatch 2, like, to me, that always stood out of, like, that's somebody who, is willing, obviously, who has the tenure and has the namesake to be able to push back a little bit and say, no, we want to do this. Because that's going to help us in the long run. We got to make sure we have, the fans stick with us in the long run. That's what's most important. So, not to keep dragging it on, but to me, that was always such a, he was always such a kind of beacon for that stuff. And, it sucks. It sucks that we're going to see that go. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, well, Aaron's just going to completely ruin the franchise. No, I don't think so at all. He was a founding member of Overwatch. He carries Jeff's vision with a lot of stuff from what it sounds like. I think Overwatch is going to be okay, but, obviously there is some hesitation with some stuff. So fingers crossed Overwatch, prevails and keeps growing as a, esport and as just a franchise in general in gaming. But Mike, enough of button mash. Let's head into our big topics for this week. And we got two here that I kind of want to discuss. First off being, though, the big one, really, I guess, for the broader sense of Xbox and the Xbox ecosystem and all that. But Xbox Cloud Gaming, the limited beta of it at least, is finally coming to Apple devices and PC. Specifically Apple devices. That's the big thing. So this write-up comes from Adam Bankhurst over on IGN. As always, link in the description. Go over there, give Adam a click, do all that, and make sure you take care of him, because really good write-up. Microsoft has announced that the Xbox Cloud Gaming limited beta for PC, or Windows 10 PCs and Apple phones and tablets via web browser will begin for select Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members tomorrow, April 20th. As revealed on Xbox Wire, invites will be sent out tomorrow, and those selected will be able to play over 100 Xbox Game Pass titles through Edge, Google Chrome, or Safari on xbox.com/play. This limited beta will be a time to test and learn, and invites will be sent out on a, quote, more continuous basis to players in all 22 supported countries. The goal is to iterate quickly and give all Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members this new way to play in the coming months. These games can be played with a compatible Bluetooth or USB connected controller like the Backbone One, or via custom touch controls for more than 50 games. The reason Xbox Cloud Gaming is only available via web browser on iOS devices is due to Apple's restriction on games that bypass the App Store via another app. Xbox Cloud Gaming, which used to be called Project xCloud, has been available for Android devices for some time. Even in 2019, we were impressed with the tech behind the streaming service, and it has only improved since then. So, while cloud gaming obviously coming to PC via web is definitely a big deal for those who are waiting to or wanting to get into PC gaming to a degree without the financial barrier. Think of Stadia and how that was tested out. And I'll be honest, Stadia's gotten a bad rep. But anytime I've used their service, now granted, I have pretty damn good internet. Mike, you have pretty damn good internet. So if we would use that, yeah, you're going to have a pretty, as long as you have a stable connection, you're going to have an easy time streaming at the, what's the marketed, specs that they're promising with this. But at the same time, though, the tech behind Google, it was, to me personally, Stadia hasn't worked because Stadia doesn't know what the hell Stadia is and doesn't know how to present it, when really the tech behind it, though, is fantastic and it's really dope. But I digress. So that's really cool, obviously, with cloud gaming getting to go in there. But the bigger deal is that it's rolling out to iOS devices. That's massive. I mean, we're talking about getting high quality AAA gaming, console level gaming, PC level gaming, straight to really the largest install base of mobile phones. Both, we're talking tablets and phones. And obviously the US, Android kind of blows them out of the water globally, especially in, Asia and Middle East and stuff like that, is very heavy Android users. But obviously Apple devices are such a mainstay, especially in just North America in general, that really, even if a small percentage of those people would be able to buy into Game Pass, it pushed subscriptions through the friggin' roof. So this is a very big deal for Microsoft. Also, too, shout out to Microsoft. Just want to give them a big thumbs up. They just hit the 23 plus million subscribers to Game Pass recently, which is fucking really crazy, which is great. So Mike, while it's only a closed invite-only beta right now, we're talking between, slowly being staggered out to Game Pass Ultimate members, which reminds me, I gotta check my emails, see if that's in there. Do you think this could be one of these major snowball effects for cloud gaming in general on a bigger scale once it releases publicly? Could this be the catalyst this avenue of gaming needs to push more into a casual, or more into the minds of casual oriented gamers?
Yeah, I am really excited because this is something that I'm not 100% sure what episode it would have been. Seems like a long time ago now that we talked about the battle between, is Xbox Cloud Gaming ever going to come to Apple devices? Because they were having that spat about, oh, well, you have to individually rate each game, blah, blah, blah. And then Microsoft kind of clapped back with well, you let Netflix on your system, and Netflix has movies from rated G to R, you know what I mean?
Right.
What's the difference? So it seems like that's finally all behind them. And I am super stoked for this opportunity because it's something that I am really excited to do, because I think I would have to buy, obviously, a controller. I guess now, well, the problem is getting a controller into the iPhone to play it, you know what I mean? Because I guess I could do Bluetooth, right? I don't know. Anyway, this is all a ramble of saying I can't wait to hopefully get my hands on it at some point and give this a shot. I would love to see, how this works. And as long as I get to use an Xbox controller, because that's all I really care about. I don't really like the PlayStation controllers. They're not comfortable. I'm kind of a snob when it comes to my controllers. But I'm thinking this is a huge W for Microsoft as a whole, because you're talking about your Game Pass service that you've been touting as this great deal in gaming. You've been giving everyone reasons. about, why this is a great deal in gaming, then
Mhm.
you're really, giving even more value to people, because for a while, you had been able to take advantage of this, and I've seen my friends play PlayStation on their, iPhones,
Mhm.
but nobody was able to play Xbox on it. So I'm really excited to see, how this works out. And like you said, with the faster internet speeds coming into the homes,
Mhm.
it's going to give people more capability. Like, I'm still going to be someone who probably wants to play on a 24-inch monitor anyway with my Xbox
Agreed.
or my PC. But who's to say if I'm laying in bed, I don't want to kick on my phone and play something for a little bit, whether it be like, I mean, I think we've talked about the latency issues. We're talking like RPGs, like maybe an Oblivion or something,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something that's on Game Pass, just to play it, while I'm in bed, just kind of chilling out. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I think this could be something that really blows the top off of the cloud gaming and Game Pass subscriptions for Microsoft, because I mean, all things considered, let's say you're a household that has a Sony PlayStation 5, you can't afford a gaming PC, and Halo comes out and you always liked Halo. I
Mhm.
mean, worst case scenario, you buy it on your phone and play it, right? But I mean, legitimately, that's the worst case scenario. And even to have that availability is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that it's more so like, obviously, I was able to partake um in the beta originally, whenever xCloud, when it was first deemed that, was first released. It really kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, I could see myself actually, using this. I could see myself actually going through and, using this service. Like, not, obviously, like you're saying, it would be rough to go and play a first person shooter. Like, I tried out, Halo 5 was offered on it before MCC was. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Screw it. I'll try it or whatever, but um, I went on and I was like, you know what? If this wasn't like, on this screen and in this version, and this is what was offered to me, and I didn't have access to, a PC, a gaming PC or anything like that, yeah, I'd use this, but me personally, I just wouldn't use it in that avenue. But at the same time, though, to me, this is such, I think, opening up this door specifically in the US, because in general, I feel like if I'm Microsoft, I feel pretty good releasing, cloud gaming via mobile, at least. I feel pretty good about that releasing just on Android, for the whole fact of, you see the foothold that Microsoft has in, Mexico, South America, the UK, obviously other European countries that we see them in. And then you move over into Asian countries and whatnot, like India and whatnot. So it's like, you see the foothold that both Android has there and Microsoft. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, we're going to be fine. But when you look on their home turf in the US, it's so predominantly Apple. I mean, predominantly Apple. That it just, I'm sure it's got a sting, knowing that, hey, we're not going to be able to, get this app on here and make it integrated with, a standalone experience. But the fact that they were able to work something out so that, yeah, it stinks that you got to play it through a web browser, that, I'm curious to actually see how that works. This is the one time I wish I had an iPhone that I could, jump on there. I might have to see with, if I do get the invite, I want to try it on maybe my fiance's iPhone. So, because I want to see how that works via mobile, or I could try it on the iPad. But I digress. That it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of, works out to a degree, that, because if that really catches on, and that is, we don't see anything kind of pop up from Apple that kind of puts the kibosh to that, and, tries to, which I'm sure Microsoft's legal team has made it so, in partner with, obviously, the development staff and whatnot who are designing these products to be able to work. But I'm sure they completely covered themselves. But, if that takes off, there's no stopping this service in my eyes. That
Mhm.
it's like, if people want to have access to gaming on the go outside of the Switch, with, obviously you're never going to top Nintendo with their handheld devices nor their IP. Like, that's just how it is. Like, they're going to be, in terms of, they're the Disney to the extent of quality and whatnot that you get, plus also just being that Disney name of, like, when you know Disney, you know what you're getting, and that's what they are, especially with their handhelds now. That it's never going to top the, native Switch going out there and doing that. But if you want that experience in terms of console level gaming on the go, this is a great first step in getting people to get into that, to then push to get this product even better and have that service number, or have the subscriber number keep going up and going up and going up and going up. That pushes, ingenuity and development further and further. That, there's going to be the executive level that looks and says, man, we've got 10 extra million people signed up just from iOS users alone. Moving forward, we should probably start preparing for an even bigger amount of people to jump in on this. We need to start funding this and that. So to me, this seems like that's really going to be the catalyst that moves that forward. To me, the PC end of it is just icing on the cake. And I think that's going to just be a lot of people of, hey, it's another way to just be able to keep gaming on the go. Or, I gotta, go into the office for a while, but on my lunch break I want to play, or something like that. Or just, I'm at the airport for a while, I'm stuck in a layover, I don't want to play on my phone. Oh, I could just play right on my PC or something like that. Or in a hotel or something. Or, my fiance is watching something on TV, I want to play on something that, isn't necessarily my phone or something. Cool, I could bust out my laptop and play that way. So, there's a lot of really good things going on with that. And I think that's more icing on the cake for a lot of people who already have the Game Pass subscription. But in general, though, the mobile one with iOS is going to, I think, really, if it sticks the landing, it could really run. I mean, it could really run. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes after. I'm curious to see what the takeaways are from this beta. I'm curious to see what, really we see from just consumers in general who aren't necessarily, out of the, how do I want to say this? I want to see consumers who are outside of the bubble eventually get in on this, because obviously this is going to be, they're focused on, people who have xCloud right now getting in and doing it. But at the same time, I want to see those who aren't, from the outside trying to get in on this. And to me, that's what's going to be really, really going to be that catalyst to drive that, I think. But I think, too, obviously, I've seen some really positive impressions early on about the iOS version, but it's all people within the Xbox ecosystem. I'm not saying like they're shills or anything like that, but it's people who are used to using this product on, maybe it is an Android device, or, being keen to saying, oh yeah, I know the value of this already. I know what I'm getting out of this already. It's just on their platform. That's great. I want to see how people who haven't had this, what they feel of and what they taste with this type of thing. So it's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see when this actually rolls out, what's going to happen with it, because it could really bust open the doors a little bit. So, Mike, let's head to our last big news story for this week. And of course, we're talking about one of our favorite game franchises and one of our most anticipated games coming out, I should say, Resident Evil 8 Village, whatever you want to call it, I guess. But there was a new Resident Evil showcase last week. It was right after we recorded, so naturally we couldn't get in there. But Tom Phillips has a really good write-up over on Eurogamer to kind of set the stage for this. And I kind of want to talk about, a bunch of different things that are coming to Resident Evil and just in general, what we can expect from this franchise moving forward. But more specifically, I want to get in after. We're going to talk about my time with the Resident Evil Village demo and what I thought about it and, really where I think this is going. So let's dig into Tom's write-up here real quick, and then we'll go from there. Capcom's latest Resident Evil Showcase event has detailed a series of times you'll be able to demo Resident Evil Village ahead of its May release. It also included an announcement of Resident Evil 4 VR for Oculus Quest 2, a quick look at Village's Mercenaries mode, a new trailer for the Netflix CGI series Infinite Darkness, and some other small bits and pieces. No new Resident Evil games were announced. The showcase kicked off with a new Village trailer showing clips from early in the game, a radio broadcast calling for survivors, a look at the werewolf-like lichens, and Lady Demistru taking a tasty sip of Ethan's blood. Chris Redfield also puts in an appearance, but what he's up to isn't clear. You'll be able to poke around all of this for yourself with the game's upcoming time-limited demo, which will allow you to play for 60 minutes on PlayStation 5, PS4, Stadia, Steam, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X, obviously most importantly. This demo will be available for all platforms for 24 hours starting May 2nd at I didn't even realize they put at UK time and whatnot. That tripped me up for a second. At 1 a.m. UK time or 2 a.m. in Europe, which obviously makes sense if we're talking an article from Eurogamer. Duh. In North America, this will be from May 1st at 5 p.m. Pacific for 24 hours or 8 p.m. Eastern time. You will be able to choose between exploring the game's village or castle areas, or dip into both if you so choose. But you only have 60 minutes in total. Now, PS4 and PS5 owners also get 8 hours in Village, where you can play both Village and Castle areas over preceding weekends. Each area will be opened up for 8 hours, in which you can then play for 30 minutes. In the UK, the game's Village area will be available for PS4 and PS5 users to sample. Obviously, that was this past weekend, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. In North America, the same thing. So a week later, so this week coming up, we'll get another demo, which I'm hopefully going to be talking about again next week. The game's castle area will then be available for Sony users on the 25th until 26th at midnight. So you'll have an 8-hour window to play all those, yada yada. Exactly the Capcom said. So 30 minutes. Yes, this seems a bit complicated. PS4 and PS5 owners can start downloading the demo today. Moving on, we got a look at Village's Mercenaries mode, the fast-paced combat mode featured in numerous other Resident Evil games, which returns here with a few tweaks. New features include the game's merchant popping up between areas who sells supplies, guns, and upgrades. You could also select abilities, which include skills where you can buff movement speed, weapon damage, armor, and more. Capcom's competitive multiplayer Resident Evil Reverse was again mentioned as being free for Village owners, though there was no new information shared on that. Next, we got a trailer for Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, the upcoming CGI series for Netflix, starring Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. It'll launch in July of this year and set in 2006, a couple years after Resident Evil 4, so it'll feature Ashley Graham's father as the president. Will Ashley return and get to hide in more boxes? We'll have to wait and see. The live-action movie Welcome to Raccoon City has wrapped filming and is now in post-production, Capcom said, though there's no word on a release date just yet. And in other news, this is big for us, Mike, Resident Evil will join Dead by Daylight in some capacity, with more details to be announced on May 25th, which is the 5-year anniversary celebration for Dead by Daylight. Capcom wrapped up the show with an announcement of Resident Evil 4 VR for Oculus Quest 2, which is being developed by Armature. The version of this game moves its action to a first-person perspective, even its inventory management, which is now in 3D. More details will come as part of an Oculus showcase on the 21st of April. So, tons and tons of cool stuff announced coming in the pipeline for Resident Evil fans, but obviously the biggest ticket item out of all of this, the announcements really, was surrounding the franchise's next mainline entry, Resident Evil Village or 8 or whatever you want to call it. So let's kind of break it down one by one. Mike, what did you think from what you saw of the Mercenaries mode shown off so far? You know, which is something fans have been clamoring for within the Resident Evil franchise. That's been one of those kind of like hidden gems that people want, where, you know, they got, what was it? Resident Evil, they came with Resident Evil 3. What was it? 3 remake, multiplayer. What was it? This is killing me. I gotta look it up. Project Resistance. That's it. So Resident Evil Resistance. Yeah, that's it. yeah, like when that came out, people were asking, why not just give us Mercenaries? It's not multiplayer, but like if we want an additional mode out of this, we'll take that. RE-verse, same thing. Like when that, or RE Reverse, I should say, when that was announced and being like a, team-based shooter, like why don't you just give us Mercenaries? So, what do you think about from what you saw with the Mercenaries mode? Do you think that's something that, is going to, the one thing with Resident Evil games has always been their replayability. And I definitely think that's going to be the case with Resident Evil 8 as well. But having this additional mode, I mean, do you think that's really going to add tenfold to that? Like, comparative to what we've seen in the past with, now we're seeing with RE-verse and what we saw with Project Resistance. Do you think this is going to add more added value than those previously?
I think it'll add a little bit of more replayability value to people, because there are a lot of folks out there that will purchase a game, or I guess decide to not purchase a game because of the lack of replayability. There are some games out there that unfortunately once you play through it once, you never really get that urge to do it again, because you feel like you've gotten the entire experience out of it. And of course there's a lot of exceptions to the rule, but with this in particular, to me, I'm someone who picked up Resident Evil pretty late. I mean, I did play through Resident Evil 4 with Adam on the GameCube, but I didn't play again until RE7. And then with RE2, I, started speedrunning it a little bit. And there's something super fun about speedrunning Resident Evil games. I guess it's probably because, is there going to be cheese strategies? Like, are you just going to cheese stuff? Absolutely. But it's one of the reasons why I loved speedrunning Ninja Gaiden Black so much, is because there's little to no glitches. Are there things that you can do that might break the coding a little bit of your opponents? Sure. But you're not breaking the game. You're not going out of bounds. You're not doing things like that. So I really enjoy it for that sense. And I've always thought with Resident Evil 2, one of the best things about it was the replayability, because you play through Leon's story or you play through Claire's, and then you play through the other one. And they did such a good job of kind of combining those two stories, seeing what Claire's doing while Leon is doing other things, and how they kind of eventually cross paths, like, which is a super awesome experience. And Resident Evil 7 for me was one that, after beating the game on the original difficulty, I wanted to play through on Madhouse, because I genuinely loved that game. I thought it was spectacular. So for me, I've never had problems finding replayability. However, this is all a long-winded way to say I understand how other people might not want to play through on a harder difficulty. They might not care to do the speed running things. They might not care for the challenges that Resident Evil 2 added in for free, which was an incredible amount of value. They might not care to play through Leon's story if they've played through Claire's, or vice versa. I'm someone who I did speed runs on Claire's story, and I enjoyed her story, tenfold over Leon's, but that's, I guess one of the reasons would be because Mr. X doesn't come in until a little bit later. But long story short, I can totally understand why people might not want to just play through the story mode over and over again, because they get bored. It's a lot. It's like, now we're kind of spoiled, because I remember NES games, like, no matter how many times you beat Super Mario Brothers 1, you're going to play it again. No matter how many times you beat Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat, you're going to play him again. You're going to see if you can, lose less lives, or do this or do that, or what you're going to do. And with Resident Evil, in other games, there might be little to no reason. Like, some people aren't really into collectibles. Like, they don't really care about breaking all the bobbleheads in Resident Evil 7. Some people don't really care about achievements. I know I cared about achievements for certain games, and other games I really don't give a shit. So I've never been much of like a total achievement hunter. With certain games, I did, but that there's different incentives to continue to play a game, and for some gamers, like, none of those incentives work for them. So what are you going to do for them when you introduce this multiplayer mode that people have kind of been looking for? And this is a perfect way to keep people engaged with your game and keep people playing, because if let's say this game mode really strikes the fancy of some people, and now all of a sudden you're going to release a DLC that's free to play, a new free map, but you can get these skins of these characters for $5, $10. That's where you start seeing the added value. And I know, some people are going to roll their eyes at hearing about microtransactions. I'm not the biggest microtransaction fanatic in the world, but you have to realize that there are microtransactions in the game that aren't completely game breaking, that truly enhance your experience, that are well worth it. We talked about Hunt briefly at the top of the show. The base game was $20, and that was fine. But the added $20 in value that we got for the DLC, I don't know if you took part in that, but me and Adam did. We got a lot more blood points. We got a lot more. We got a lot more guns, more skins, more things of that nature. And for a game that was $40 that I probably should have bought ahead of time anyway, it was a no-brainer for me. And I know other people might not feel that way, but you also have to realize that like it's gonna be the new wave of game. It's not even new. I wouldn't even say it's new. It's the normal now. It's the way that these game devs are adding value to their game because, as you've said 100 times and as we've gone over 1,000,000 times on this podcast, like the value that game developers or the profit that game developers make from a game, it doesn't come in the $60 or $70 or $80 or $90 upfront. It comes later. Like they can sell games and that makes them money, but a continuous stream of money is what they're after. Right. And this is a way to do it. CS:GO did it with skins. And game like Fortnite did it with skins. It's a free game for Christ's sakes. But they did it for skins. And this is a way to keep people engaged with your Resident Evil game and to keep people, playing it and enjoying it and potentially investing more money into it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you made all very valid points regarding this. It's the one thing that me personally, and I know you're the same way, Mike, and Adam's the same way to a degree. And I think it's one of the things that have always made our friendship when it comes to gaming so memorable, because we keep making memorable experiences out of this because we love replaying games. Like there's certain games that we like as a group will always play together or be like, dude, we haven't played this in a while. We got to run back through on that. It's like, yeah, definitely. So like it's usually no hesitation with stuff like that. So it's one of those things that it's like, to me, I know I feel safe saying like anytime we've played Resident Evil, it's always been like, we got to play that again. We got to do that again. So like for us, like I love replaying games. Like to me, I look over here at, my bookshelf that has all my physical games on it, both, old, new, alike. There's games on there that I look at that, there's some that I haven't touched. Granted, I'm also somebody who likes collecting games and whatnot, but there's a few that I haven't touched. But then there's games that I look at and I'm like, instead of playing that one game, I've played that one game like 6 times. Like it's stuff like that, like Oblivion. I can't tell you how many times I played that. Skyrim, I played a ton. But like looking on here, like some of the games that like every time I went back, I know this is a PlayStation game and this is an Xbox podcast, but everyone knows it's no secret I'm a big Uncharted fan. I had put 70 hours alone into Uncharted 4 since it released. 70 hours. Now, granted, I got the platinum and stuff like that, but like, I just loved playing that game, like replaying that game. The story was so great and everything involved with it was so great. Like, and that surprised me. I'm like, holy shit, I really do like replaying games. I mean, it's crazy. So to me, I value a lot of that already in Resident Evil. Like when I look at Resident Evil, I'm like, yes, that's what I want out of it. That's what, to me, that works well in my interest with gaming. And I get the value out of that alone when I say, oh yeah, I'm going to buy Resident Evil for $60. Like, because I'll get, even if the campaign's only, 10 to 15 hours on it in, most cases at most, like, even if that's only the case, like, I'm still in the camp of like, well, I'm going to replay it, so I'll at least get 30 hours out of it, and I'll probably play it again after that. I'll get 40 some hours out of it. Like, and if I like it enough and try to go to do all the achievements or all the trophies or whatever, like, I'm going to go do that, or I'll replay it on stream for everyone at some point, or like, to me, that equals value already. Mm-hmm. So when I see more of this being added, whether it's like, RE-verse or, Project Resistance, like, yeah, like, they're not my cup of tea, but that's great. That's more added value. But when I see something like Mercenaries mode, I am all in on it. Like, because it's so dynamically different to what you're doing in Resident Evil, and specifically, like, I don't want to say completely different, but a time attack mode compared to what you're doing. Like at times, Resident Evil, especially the newer iteration of it, like in the first person perspective, it can be it can be methodical at times. It can be a little like a slow burn. Like it is, I shouldn't say it's a fast paced game, but you're meant to kind of sink into the environment there. You're going through, interacting, and solving puzzles throughout that environment. It isn't always about the enemies necessarily. Like the zombies are second nature. It's everything around that builds that story for you. But especially too, as we get into the newer Resident Evils, it's much more focused on exploring that environment first person and the atmosphere around it, and what that's invoking, not necessarily combat with enemies. And obviously you do have to beat bosses and things like that, but it always felt secondary to me, at least. So having something like this that completely flips the game on its head to a degree, and something fans have been clamoring about, is only good. Now, granted, it could come out and it could be, flash in the pan for some people and then be done. But for those people who love Resident Evil and play this, like, that really could be something that, could really push the envelope for Resident Evil and what it could do. But, Mike, let me ask you about the demo before I get into this. What do you think about, is this dialogue around the demo just utterly confusing in general?
Think so. I think it was I think it's a little bit confusing as to like what the game plan of it was. I mean, not necessarily.
Wait, but welcome to 8 hours in Village where you only have 30 minutes.
Yeah, like what is that about?
On the third Sunday of the month every 2 years. Like, yeah, it was definitely a little confusing with how they presented it. Like, I'm shocked that they I'm not shocked by any means that it seems like Sony has the marketing rights for this game, akin to like they did with like Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 7, Red Dead 2 comes to mind, when a third party game that they had the marketing rights to, Destiny. Like I think they have the rights to market this game solely, especially with it being revealed at the PS5 game reveal event last year. So but it does seem a little like, I think they could have worded it a little bit better, or they could have done like, okay, cool, you're going to play this demo, a day before on PS4, PS5 than everyone else, not 2 weeks. And that seems a little long in the tooth, but I digress. But when you played the demo, before I go into what I experienced with it and kind of set the stage for what I think, is going to be getting out of this Resident Evil, the newest entry in Resident Evil, what are you hoping to get out of Resident Evil 8 in general? And, with this demo, what are you hoping to see in this demo that kind of sets that stage for you as you hope it will be? What are you hoping to get out of that demo that will eventually lead you to saying, yes, this is what I want out of this game?
I'm looking for more of Resident Evil 7. I know some people might like the classic Resident Evils, and they might not like the first person nature of Resident Evil 7, things of that nature. But I feel like Capcom did such a stellar and spectacular job at making you feel in touch with the atmosphere. You felt so intrinsically tied to everything that was going on with Ethan, and that was something that I hadn't felt before with a Resident Evil game. And I think it's because of third to first person break. Going to first person was such a great way to get people involved and get people more, what's the word I'm thinking of? God, it's so obvious. More immersion with the game. And that's more of what I want. I did see that Lady D is going to chase you around like Mr. X, which is pretty cool, because it's going back to Resident Evil 2, which I felt like probably a really good idea, because the Resident Evil 2 remastered did such a great job in sales and people just loved it. So bringing that back is really interesting, and I'm excited to see what they do with that, because even in Resident Evil 7, I mean, you were constantly being chased like by Jack at the beginning, you know what I mean? So it's really cool to bring that, and I'm excited to see what they build off of that, what they have in store for us going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, I'm in the same camp as you, where, I want more. I'm the biggest thing, and we've talked about it before, like, me personally, I think Resident Evil 7 is like 3/4 of a perfect game, if not maybe even more. And even replaying it recently, like, solidifies that. Like, the first, like, really, yeah, 3/4, I would say. Like, until you, in spoilers for Resident Evil 7, if not, go play this right now. Like, it's dirt cheap. You can go find it, like, really, really cheap right now. And I believe it's on Game Pass right now, at least on PC. So go play that, please. But spoilers for Resident Evil 7, so click off for a second. When you get to really the boat, to me, when you're on the cruise ship, that's when things kind of like the mine, I'm okay with. It's not too bad. Where it goes, it's almost like a wave effect where it's like you get on the boat, you're doing the Mia mission, or you're doing the Mia portion of the level, then you switch over to Ethan, and it kind of like just drags there. It feels like I mean, it explains a lot, obviously, but it's not like meh. Like, if they cut that, it probably wouldn't have been better. I always resonated more with the actual mansion portions of the game. And I feel like you did as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that was the high point of that game, is being on that estate and going from, the guest house to the garage to the different areas just all around there. The little like shack that Meaty Margheriti was at.
Yes.
So it's that game in general was just so spectacular, and it does horror so well, first person horror specifically, where it doesn't necessarily, like, it scares you and it's unsettling, but it isn't unplayable, like, to the degree of it's like a drug. It just wants you to keep pushing for it just a little bit. One more hit. Like, it's so great. But I'm with you. I think that, and obviously ending now for spoilers for Resident Evil 7, but I'm with you. I want more of Resident Evil 7. I think Capcom looked at, and I think this will be a test almost to a degree of, that model of Resident Evil, where they look at this and say, okay, 7, it ended up being a really good shakeup for the series. A lot of people were high on how we handled first-person horror. Worked out really well. There were obviously some complaints. This is, I think, going to be the game where they're making a few changes. I'm seeing more elements of, like, Resident Evil 4 that are added to it, which isn't a bad thing by any means. The shop and different things like that. The aesthetic obviously makes me feel very akin to Resident Evil 4 with the gothic presentation. But at the same time, too, though, I think this is really going to be that telltale of, if they really knock it out of the park, this may be the formula of Resident Evil moving forward. Like, this may be it. This may be this may be what Resident Evil looks like for the foreseeable future. And to me, that's a good thing, because I love first-person horror. But I would also play third-person horror. Like, I'm not necessarily like, I it's all the same to me. Not all the same, but it's, it is what it is. But I definitely, what I got out, now I guess I can go into my review, if you want to call it, of the demo. I was able to play it on PS5. I imagine it is going to be identical in terms of quality and performance on the Xbox Series X, which I'll play it on whenever that releases, so I can get, obviously a, review to you guys on that. But it checked off so many of the boxes that I want, in terms of, if it didn't feel necessarily like before with Resident Evil, with Resident Evil 7, if it didn't feel like it flowed well enough, it sure as hell does now. All the transitions between cinematics and gameplay are so seamless, and they're so interactive still, that you're able to interact as, Ethan while you're in those. They're not as necessarily, what do I want to say? Almost like you're stuck on the Disney ride cart going. Like, you're just kind of along for the ride. No, you could kind of move around, and you could, view the interaction in different perspectives with Ethan doing this. So it's like, from ends like that, it just feels so much more breathed and lived in. And the only thing that kind of stuck out to me at first was the combat, and it wasn't bad by any means, but it was going from feeling more actiony than before, which I feel like a lot of these monsters that we're going to have to kill and whatnot are going to be more bullet spongy and maybe a little tougher. So you kind of have to probably balance that out with a little tougher weapons. But to me, man, everything about that demo felt exactly what I wanted. Now, we didn't get to experience the, shopkeep, or we didn't get to experience the castle yet or anything like that, even though I did play the main demo on PS5 a little while back after the first Resident Evil showcase. I was able to play both of them, and getting the castle sense in there was very good. But if it's anything like that, we're going to be fine. But playing this one and getting to do and experience some of the puzzles and things that make Resident Evil really hit home that this is by far one of my most anticipated games of this year. And it is really living up to the high expectations I naturally set for it, being somebody who loves Resident Evil. So I'm really excited to see kind of where it nets out at the end of this. I'm excited to see what people think of this whenever they get their hands, especially our audience who didn't have a chance to get into the early access of the demo like I did. What you guys think. I'm excited to try it on PC whenever we get that 60-minute demo. I'm going to try it on pretty much every platform I have, but maybe not Stadia. But I'm going to try it on console and PC, or on Xbox and PC as well. So I'm really excited to get in and kind of dig around and see what this game has to offer. And it has a lot of high expectations living up to what this game is, or what this franchise has, especially from 7. But I really think they're on the right trend, man. I really do. So I'm really excited for it. But before we wrap up on that, what else, kind of to cap off the discussion on Resident Evil, what else from the showcase did you really like? What had you hyped and everything? Obviously, I think I could say the elephant in the room. Obviously, the inclusion of Resident Evil to Dead by Daylight is the big one.
Yeah, that is a pretty big deal for me, because Dead by Daylight's one of those games that I kind of fall off of, just for a lot of reasons. I understand it's a game that you're not supposed to win as the survivor, but sometimes it gets a little bit ridiculous. So I do leave the game for a few reasons, but there's always stuff that brings me back. The Stranger Things DLC brought me back, and now this Resident Evil being included in it is going to bring me back some, and I'm really pumped about that. But the game itself just looks so good. It's the showcase, to be honest, the thing I was most excited about were a lot of the visuals from the game. Just like you were kind of talking about, the gothic nature of it. All of that stuff is just all of the surrounding area, the scene, all the setting, all of that stuff just kind of comes together in such an interesting way that I think it's about to be something that is it's immersive in a similar way to Resident Evil 7. You talked about being in the mansion, in the outdoor realm, and being in the bayou. You're kind of in this area. In this gothic castle is going to be a similar way, and I feel like they did such a good job. They do such a good job, I guess I should say, at making you feel what Capcom wants you to feel. Capcom, whenever they make these games and they make these areas, these rooms, they are trying to elicit specific feelings from the player. And the first time you play through, you are going to feel those feelings. That's something that Capcom does they do extremely well. Another developer that I feel like does this really well is Rockstar, especially with like Red Dead Redemptions. All those games, they do such a good job. And that's something that I'm so excited about. And I know it's kind of like a weird answer. And I'm not necessarily deflecting. It's just, that is honestly what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited to get into Resident Evil 8, The Village. And I'm really excited just to get into the nitty gritty and get immersed into this game. Play downstairs with the lights off, headphones on, and just get into it. You know what I mean?
No, I'm right there with you. That's that's the best. That's the only way you could play those games. I mean, period. Come on now. So, I'm definitely right there with you. I'm so excited to get into that game. But yeah, the Dead by Daylight stuff was obviously my favorite to come out of, the surprise announcements. I was like, okay, all right, yeah, hell yeah. And I'm curious to see who they're going to add. I would imagine it's either got to be Claire or Jill in there. I don't think Leon would be added, but who the hell knows? We may get a Steve and Nancy type situation, so may get Claire and Leon or something like that. So that would be really cool. On top of that, though, I'm super excited for the Resident Evil movie, the live action one to come out. That's hands down one of my most anticipated game films, I should say. There's obviously some bigger films that I'm looking forward to a little more than that. But in general, though, like I really, really, really am curious to see how this movie is going to be. Are we going to have a similar situation of, previous Resident Evil movies, or, how we seen with game movies like Assassin's Creed or something like that, where it ends up being more of just a marketing piece than anything. And that's all they really are, or marketing pieces in general. But, it's at the same time, it's still one of those things where it's like, I want there to be quality with this. I want the same quality that's put into these games as it is into the movies that's trying to depict them. Because that only does bring, that's where the marketing comes into it. That only does bring in more people. So, at the end of the day, I'm hoping that this will be, something that we can look back on and say, no, you're interested in Resident Evil, watch this movie. If you're interested, you don't want to play the games necessarily, you got to watch the movie. It's really good. So, those were my big things of it. But Mike, let's head into Party Chat before we wrap up the episode this week. And if you're new to the show, Party Chat's where we propose one question at the end of each week of the show that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as what's your favorite story beat in a game, or we've been playing during quarantine, or could be a little more in depth as to, why the negative stigma around gaming still exists. And after answering the question ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses to our question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or over on our email, shooting us an email at bonusaccessory@gmail.com, and we'll read some of the responses the following week. Last week's question: what do you think is more important to the long-term sustainability of Game Pass? Amount of content or affordability? And Taylor G said content. People are willing to continue using a service if the price goes up a bit, if the content justifies it. Continue to put more content onto it, and I'm fine with paying a few extra bucks down the road. I tend to agree. I definitely side with that. I mean, HBO Max is $15 a month, but the amount of content I get on there, I feel totally justifies that. So, that's totally fine. Same with Disney Plus. Disney Plus has gone up now, price wise. The content they're putting out there is fucking awesome. So I'm good with it. So Mike, this week's question, in terms of conversations around the platform, by the end of 2021 this year, will we be talking more about third-party titles or first-party titles / exclusives being played on our Xboxes? What do you think we're going to talk more about? A third-party game we can get, any on, most other platforms that we decide to play on our Xbox to potentially have the best experience, visually or whatnot? Or are we going to be talking about a first-party lineup, or title that comes out of the first-party lineup, like a Halo Infinite or something that's on our Xboxes? What's the conversation going to be about?
I think by the end of 2021, we're going to be talking about Halo Infinite the most, to be honest. I think, that's going to be a game that absolutely there's going to be people who are concerned about it, and rightfully so. There's going to be people that are worried about 343 in general. But I do honestly think that, I'm not crazy. I don't pretend to think that, they're absolutely perfect and there's absolutely nothing that they do wrong. But to me, I think that they, have a very good opportunity to blow this one out of the water. And I'm saying it almost out of a necessity for the Halo series, because at the end of the day, the Halo series needs this to, really bounce back from the poor standing that it's in now. So I'm really hoping that, we see Halo Infinite bounce back, and we see, a huge experience as far as straight up, multiplayer, BR, everything. I just hope it blows it out of the water this year.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm in the same way. I'm hoping that we get that from Halo Infinite. I hope that, because that's only going to be positive for not only Xbox but the Halo community who needs that right now. I'm ready for that conversation, or that game to lead conversations. I'm ready for that Halo to be back in the spotlight. I'm ready to, or at least have the chance to grab that spotlight and own that moment. I'm hoping that at the end of 2021, we're talking about Halo Infinite in a positive manner, and that's what's kind of defining our conversations around Xbox. But Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you? Talk about all the nerdy stuff we talked about today. Could be Resident Evil related, cloud gaming, whatever we talked about. Overwatch, which RIP Jeff, man. Where can people find you on the interwebs to talk about all this?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you can do so at just regular old Travelus. That's TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all of that jazz, wherever I tell you to get a podcast at, or wherever you get a podcast at, I should say. Do that. Follow us. Let us know all about that. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. And with that being said, Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.